Today, we're going to talk about the 4 phases of life from 0 to 80 years. Now, this doesn't mean that life ends at 80 years and doesn't mean that it will reach 80 years. But these are the 4 phases. They each have a crisis, a growth period, a maturity or success, and a success and a goal. And they deal with masculine or feminine energy, which both are present in every single human being. And if you don't know about these, which I don't think really anybody does, then you might not know exactly where you are, what you should be focusing on in growth, and what's kind of past already. Now, after you reach the peak of each one, it'll start to decline. That doesn't mean to be totally decrepit immediately, but that's when the peak of it has declined. You'll see what I mean after we get into it a little bit. So the first one is the physical. The crisis being birth. That's your entry into the world. It is your existence on this planet. The growth is expansive and outward. This is obvious in your physical body. The structures, muscles, muscles, bones, organs, everything grows from when you are born until you're 20 years old. So the physical happens between 0 to 20. This is the journey from baby to adult. This is a masculine energy. It deals with the body structures. Success, or the goal of it, equals a healthy, strong body. When you are 18, they say, is the grown up, but it's somewhere between, the brain keeps forming until your whole life, but fully formed, the brain is about 25 years old. But about 18 is where you have an adult body. And the element of this is earth. The second phase of life is the mental. This is 20 to 40. The crisis equals purpose. So this usually happens to people when they graduate high school, or if they're going to go off to college, or are they going to get a job, are they going to get married, what are they going to do with their life? The growth of this also is expansive and outward. And what this growth is are you going to have a job? What's going to be your career? You're going to go to college or university first? There's so many decisions all about what your purpose in this life is going to be, and the mental, where you're going to focus your mental energy along this journey from 20 to 40. You're going to be looking at what is your place in this world. When you're a kid, they ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, here's when you start to say, well, I'm grown up. What am I going to be now? And you are learning skills, acquiring knowledge. And your transition is going from an apprentice to a master in any one particular field, or just in the knowledge that you're going to acquire between the ages of 20 and 40. So it doesn't matter if it's some kind of a physical profession like a mechanic, or if it's becoming a teacher and going through college and then having your first few years as a teacher. And then by the time you're tenured, that will be like around 40. But it's going from that apprentice, that absolute beginner, to the master within the mental scope. This is also a masculine energy. And again, masculine and feminine energies are present in every human being. It deals with, the first one we had, body structure. This one deals with the mind and thoughts. So it's a compilation of thoughts. Success in this field, or this phase, is confidence. That's your goal. And the element is fire. Fire, the knowledge. One thing that I left off of here is, what is maturity? In the physical is ability. And in the mental, maturity is stability. So when you're mature in the mental field, that's when you have the place that you live, the family, if that's what you so chose, or you have your experience in your career or your field, and you're confident and stable in where you are. But what happens here is the divide in life. So we've had, both of these are the masculine energies, and they are the start, the physical and the mental. Now what happens in your next phase of life? This happens between 40 and 60. This is when it switches. This is your emotional phase. What is the crisis here? Crisis is fulfillment. That's going to be, you're entering in, and so maybe you feel you've done everything right, and you've worked out, and you've eaten nutritious foods and all that stuff, and you have this great body, and you have this great job, and the house, and the picket fence, and all that stuff. But then you have, a lot of people call it a midlife crisis, and it is actually at midlife. What this is when you say, well, wait, I had my focus on all of this stuff, but now I don't feel like it's good. I don't feel good about any of this, or about some of it. And maybe you start questioning, you start looking back and questioning your decisions, and maybe you should have done something different. But it's the realization that the mental pinnacle, the success, no matter what it is, the mental pinnacle isn't actually fulfilling. Easy for me to say. So your growth in this area is actually totally different. The growth in the first two areas have been expansive and outward. And in this area is where it starts on reflective and inward. And this is why also it affects masculinity. It affects men different than it affects women. Men is often seen as the midlife crisis in a bad way. And they'll try to run back to and return to redeveloping these areas. So maybe they have a switch in careers, or they'll leave their family, or they'll start going to the gym all the time and try to get the body that they wish they would have had in their masculine, in the physical maturity. This is actually not going to fulfill them. So if they spend a lot of time in there, even if they end up being 80 years old and still reinventing their careers and going to the gym, it's not going to progress them forward. And they're going to keep finding that they're going to reach an area at the end of a cycle that just doesn't feel fulfilling. Because what has to happen is there has to be a depth of emotions developed. That's the growth. And men in most society are just not at all prepared for this. Women tend to feel, in general, everything's a generalization. Women tend to feel like all of a sudden after 40, they're feeling like they get it. Like this part of their life feels more comfortable because they've reached certain areas, and maybe not the same ones that men have in the first two areas, but they've reached certain areas and not felt like themselves because this was the masculine energies. And now we're into the feminine energy. And this deals with heart and feelings. So this time for women is actually a lot more stable than the first two were. The maturation of this is responsibility. And this is emotional maturity, emotional responsibility. The success of seeking fulfillment is going to be harmony. And what harmony is, it's a peace within and without. Not complete peace, but peace with the emotions. How do I feel about this? And starting to really be in touch with the feelings and have a depth, and that the choices are more reflecting what the feelings are. Didn't write that down. The mental pinnacle. Not fulfilling. It's good structure, but it's kind of like having, if you've built the house, you've got the bricks and the mortar, or you've got the renovations, everything's all done on the outside of the house, but the inside of the house is totally empty. So that's kind of where we get into here. And the goal also is emotional independence. And again, we're told that adult is physical maturity around 18, but a lot of people don't really feel like what the adult is supposed to feel until they hit around 40. And that's because they haven't acquired these things. They haven't developed that foundation, and then the outline and the blueprint, and then achieving to that point. So then the next part is the emotional independence by the end of it and feeling fulfilled. Now, it's not to say that everyone at 60 is going to be emotionally independent and mature and responsible for themselves and their emotions and feel harmony. Not at all. But not everyone at the age of 20 is going to have health, that's success. Not everyone at the age of 40 is going to have, the house, the car, the good, stable career. So these aren't things that everyone is going to go through. And some people may be stifled in the 0 to 20 for various reasons. Some people may have kind of skipped ahead looking for this without developing either of those two yet. The next one that you'll see, 60 to 80, the next crisis, well, this is the spiritual phase. And it's 60 to 80 plus. The crisis is legacy. What is going to be my legacy? So you see what the crisis is in birth. If you think about the delivery room, when the baby comes out, they're definitely in crisis, but that is the crisis point. And then the crisis is kind of like the question, like, what is this? And then the next crisis is the purpose. Who am I going to be in this world? The next crisis is fulfillment. It's like, why does any of this matter? How did I take this path? Am I happy in this path? And then the fulfillment, the legacy, turns to looking back on all these years, these 60 to 80 years, and saying, what am I going to leave behind? What is going to be my mark? What about the next generation, or, who I am to the world? So the growth in this is also reflective and inward, looking back on the life. And even though the spoils or the rewards may be outward, such as if you have someone who was born and raised somewhere and then went to college and had this big business and then had their kind of shortened version, say it's a male who hasn't achieved the fulfillment in this section of their life and just kind of had some swirling around. But then when they reach this area is when they look back and they say, well, now I want to give back. Now that I've accumulated all of this and developed all this, I want to give back, whether that's mentorship or offering advice and wisdom and knowledge that they have, or whether it's actual financial, where they want to start a foundation or give to things, but they seek fulfillment, this part in here. And it is similar because it's also a feminine energy. And again, masculine and feminine, every single person has both masculine and feminine energy. Biological males have more and are encouraged to develop more their masculine. Biological females have more feminine energy in general and are encouraged to develop their feminine, but they're also, in Western societies, they're encouraged to develop their masculine as well. Now, in this area, there are some goals in growth: to have compassion, but not to become a martyr. So to have compassion, but to have that border end before you reach total sacrifice of everything that you are, that you believe in, or that you built. This is where you'll start to recognize younger versions of you, your younger self, in the world. And this is why there's that draw or that pull to mentor people, whether they're related to you or not. The themes are around kindness, sharing wisdom, and inner peace. The development is of the soul connection. Success equals inner peace with your whole life. And, I didn't put the element on here. The element of the feminine is water. Lots of tears in the 40 to 60. And then the element for this is air. Realizing we all breathe the same air. There's an exhale here is an inhale here. Everything's going to be connected at some point. And the maturation, there comes a lot within the growth and that first crisis. There's a lot of feelings about that I lived my entire life wrong. But the maturation is peace, acceptance, like the serenity pair. Grant me the courage to change. God, grant me the courage to change the things I can, accept the things I can't, something along those lines. So there's an acceptance, and then release. And release meaning releasing regrets, releasing the things that you think you should have done, making peace with everything. Do people reach this? Usually not, but that's the point of laying this all out here. Because there are certain things that are skipped over, like in this area particularly. If you don't have this area developed, this area is going to suffer. If you don't have this area developed, these areas are going to suffer. If you don't have this area developed, these areas are going to suffer. And once you hit the peak, like once you hit that peak, it starts to go on a decline until the end. So the physical is going to be decline at the end. And obviously that would be if you are granted a long life, even, up until your 80s, maybe you live to 100, but you're going to be on that physical decline, and that's going to mark your exit. What marked your entrance in the physical at 0 is going to mark your exit at the end of your decline. And then with the mental, so it would kind of go up to here, but then the mental, it starts here. And it's not to say that everyone under 20 is stupid, not at all. It's saying that's where the crisis period starts. And even what the mental focus is on from 0 to 18, the kids are more interested in playing sports or, doing their nails or doing makeup. There's a lot of focus on physical, comparing physical structures and different ways of dressing. But then when you get into mental and the crisis of purpose, some of the things that were the most important to you in the physical may become your purpose. So someone who is really interested in clothes and how they dress may look for a career in fashion or in manufacturing of clothing. There's certain things that overlap. It's not that everything is specifically tied into this one area that you're in, but that's just going to be the major focus. Like no matter how much you work out at 75, you're not going to be able to achieve the same body structures, muscles, and health that you had when you were in this physical area. And no matter how much you study or how much you read or who your mentor is, you're still not by the age of 40 going to be able to acquire the same amount of wisdom. You're not going to have that life to look back on yet at 40 that you would at 80. So there's certain things that are just not possible. Now, a lot of people, once they hit this emotional crisis, if they're a heterosexual male in Western society, they look at the loss. Oh, I'm looking at this. I wasted my time in this career. Or now that I'm at the top of the career, what do I do? Or they'll say, I don't like how my body looks now compared to it did. And so they'll try to go back and get the pinnacle of each of these, but it's not going to happen. It's just, you're not in that phase anymore. So it becomes really, really difficult if you're not focused on that reflective inward, looking at the depth of emotions and developing the emotional independence. This gets really difficult. And then again, it's going to affect what you do with that next phase of life. You can still develop, but you can't go back in time. So if you're in the 40 to 60 range, that is the time to be really focusing on your emotions, emotional independence. What does it mean? If you don't do it here, that's going to be a block of time that you can't get back. You can't redo it later. So it's not to say that, your life is all doomed if you don't do that, but the decisions that you make here, what is compassion? Who are you going to give to? What are you going to be drawn to share as your legacy? It's going to be totally different here than if you have developed that depth of emotions and the emotional independence. So what happens after 80? Well, 80 plus, if you are granted a life that long, you get to dance in between all of these. And of course, there is mental decline when you get older. Right now I'm 51. I can't remember certain things. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I used to be able to pick up things so quick. I'm not as fast as I used to be. It doesn't mean you're stupid or that your brain doesn't work. But again, as you go on, everything declines in the end. And that's why you have to make peace with everything. And the emotional, once you have that big emotions and the crisis of emotions, the decline is actually, it's a good thing because it's going to result in that peace. So you may see on the outward the decline of the physical, but on the you're not going to be drawn if you have developed your emotions and the depth of emotions, identifying how you feel, why you're making the choices that you're making, and seeking harmony within and without. You're not going to be drawn to the drama anymore. You're not going to be drawn to those situations that have such heightened emotions and chaos. You are going to feel a lot more peace in your emotions, the things that you choose, and you're really going to be able to appreciate life more. And then once you get into the spiritual, when you recognize your younger self in the world, that's the time for The goal is the acceptance and release. That's the time for releasing regrets and being able to forgive yourself for things that you did in life that, maybe you would change if you knew what you knew now, and realizing that it was impossible to know at 20 what you know at 65. And then when you meet those younger selves in the world, whether it be your children, your grandchildren, other people's children, the kid on the street, and being able to recognize a younger self who's maybe doing something that you 100% believed is the most important thing in the world, and be able to offer kind advice or encouragement without saying, oh, you idiot, you shouldn't be so focused on your job because you're going to end up losing your family. Being able to have compassion for people and the kindness, the sharing the wisdom, and sharing that peace. So life is actually just a big, beautiful thing. And we all go through different phases. We all can kind of go back and hone certain things, but to make the most of wherever you are in now is going to be the best thing that you can do for your future. So if you're 20 and someone who didn't develop certain things, who's now giving you advice, who's 65, telling you what you should do here, you have to focus on you here and do what you think is best for you in whichever phase of life that you're in, because there won't be any going back. But there's certain things that you just can't know until later on. There's certain things that just won't be in focus until later on. And there you are. That's life. Hope you enjoy it. Hope you have a wonderful time while you're here, and that you always choose to act out of love, and that includes love for yourself. And be a good person. It'll come back, even if it doesn't seem like it does. It will always come back around. Thanks.